One key trick about the SATs, something that we should know from the start, is that you need to fill in every single dot. If you don't, you're penalized. That's something that a lot of people may not know. You don't skip answers in the SATs. You take educated guesses, and you'll still get points taken off if you miss it, believe it. But it's about a quarter of a point, 0.25. So for every 4 you miss, you lose a single point. That's not too bad though, meaning that you're not losing a full point. But if you don't put something down, you lose a full point. Put something in there. So that's where when I was talking about taking breaking it down from 5 answers or five questions to 2 or 3, that's what we need to do. That's what we have to narrow it down to. Because missing a question, it's not the end of the world. Promise you it's not. Missing several still isn't that bad, really. As long as you're getting more right than wrong, you're going to pass with a really good score. Promise. But we don't skip. Ever. We narrow it down, we make the best choice that we can make, and then we move on. That's where people get messed up on when it comes to SATs. Again, the SATs can be very, very intimidating. Don't let it. Take it in stride. Make sure that you're able to read those questions and you read the directions, and that's the number one answer of all. You have to make sure you know those directions. Read them 2, 3, 4 times if you have to. Read it. Make sure you know what the directions are asking. I cannot stress that enough. If you don't read those directions, you're going to do bad, which is not something we want to do. So when we do some problems, when we do some of the sample questions that we'll get to as we start going through the sections and we start really doing the course, read the directions. It doesn't matter what I say. If I could tell you something wrong, read the directions no matter what, because the directions are always right. If we do it and we read the directions and we get the directions down, we're going to do a whole lot better on this test. Promise you. The number one tip that you could take from any of this is learn to read the directions for all 8 question types. And there are multiple types. Remember, you have improved sentences, but it doesn't mean you're just improving it one way. It could be several ways. Remember, as I said, sometimes you're going to have to figure, is this the correct sentence? How do we make it better? How do we make an incomplete sentence a complete sentence? How do we make an incorrect sentence a correct sentence? What do we put into the sentence? Several different ways that they're going to ask you. And if you're not paying attention, it's going to mess you up. So make sure you read the questions and you read the directions carefully. Now, again, this is just simply an intro. So let's just continue talking about some other tips. Right now, we'll just go with the tips of what we need to actually know before we get into the actual subject matter. Okay. So another tip for the SATs is, as I said, answer all your questions, but don't get hung up on a hard question. If a question's hard, go to another question. It's not a bad thing. You can come back. All standardized tests when it comes to a college will do this. They will go from an easy subject matter to a harder. Harder doesn't necessarily mean just hard. It means that it's going to be very specific. So general English, to where you break it down to clauses. Then you break it down into dangling modifiers. Then you bring it into an area of where you have a sentence where they want to know what's correct and you have to choose the correct word. Picking out that one word, that's not easy, because they're not going to tell you what the word is. They'll tell you to replace a word with another word. What word are you replacing? That's what we have to find out. That's what it means by hard. And that's what we're going to practice. So it'll be okay. Another tip Another trick to this is to remember that all the questions are going to equal out to being scored the same. Okay? What this means is, as I said, don't stress yourself. You miss a question or you think you may be wrong, make an educated guess. It's not the end of the world. All questions are equal in terms of your scoring. You aren't going to choose, oh, I want to do this one section because this one section is going to be great. And if I do bad on the other section, who cares? Doesn't work like that. They all are the same. You have to answer them all. You have to know them all. Doesn't mean you have to know that they're right. It means that you have to know that you've put something down. Believe it. All right. As I said before, you eliminate choices. You narrow it down from 5 to 2 or 5 to 3. Hopefully you narrow it down from 5 to 1 because that means it's correct. But you gotta be able to eliminate some of these answers. And you have to know the vocabulary that you're going to put on this test. Because some of these words are not going to be easy. I promise you. There's still words that I don't know. You learn every day. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to learn these words. We're going to learn them so that when you get to that test, you got them. It's perfect. They're already here. Test cannot trick you. That's what we want to get to. Remember that, as I said, you don't want to spend a lot of time on these tests, or as questions, that is. You don't. You have maybe 60 minutes for a section. And you'll have, what? I said there were 67 questions, or 68? You have less than a minute or so. I think, and I'm almost positive, and I'm sure, that they should give you, for the writing, you're going to get about 60 minutes. The test times have changed a little because now it becomes 3 sections instead of 2. But I believe you get 60 for your writing. You get about maybe 90 minutes or so for your sentences. So you have a little more than a minute or so per. That's not a lot of time. Think how quick a minute goes when you're concentrating. It goes quick. So you have to be able to know how to break this down and either go back to the question or answer it and move on. It's very important. In the writing itself, well, in the English section, and what we're going to focus on, you don't really have to worry about scratch paper such, but if you need to write something down, maybe to jog your memory, maybe to analyze a sentence or to break it down into something better that you can understand, use a scratch paper. That's what it's there for. Don't just do it in your head and then forget. Write it down. Write everything down that you can think of. I promise you, it will help. Trust me on this, it will help. Now, here's something that I had to remember, and I'm hoping you remember from when I tell you this. Make sure you're on the right question. It's very easy to skip questions. And remember, we're not even getting into the subject matter yet. This is just the tips for you need to know. Just an introduction. And that's probably the most important tidbit of information I can give you for this entire course. Please make sure you're on the right question. Please make sure you answer the correct question. Take it from me when I say that I skipped one question and I got down to the final answer, said I was done, cheered in my head, and realized there was a question that was blank. I had to go back, I had to erase all my answers, and I had to figure out which one I missed, plug it in, and start again. Don't be me. Please don't be me on that. It's very easy. That's why you don't rush. You just take your time, but use your time wisely. If you miss a question, it's going to throw off your entire test. Don't do that. Don't. Take your time. Look at each one. Every so often, look at the number you're on. Then go back and look on your test score, or your test sheet, that is. Look at the number that you're on. Believe me when I say, you are more likely to skip a question and not even know it. So take your time and look at your questions. Also, It hasn't become an issue for a lot of the tests anymore because it's all still standardized in Scantron. Keep your sheet neat. If you have to erase thoroughly. Don't just do a quick little and then no. These tests are very, very precise in terms of if it looks like there's something in a bubble, it's the first thing it counts. And if there's a bubble that you didn't erase too well and your test is kind of messy, you're going to get it wrong. It'll count it wrong. Keep it neat. Promise you when I say it. Keep it neat. Now, those are some tips for taking just the test. Not even of the subject that we're doing. Because you have to lay a foundation before you actually get into the material. Trust me on this. It's very important that you remember these tips, and it's very, very important that you practice these tips. It's important that you remember and understand them. That's the biggie. Don't let it go in one ear and out the other, because it's going to trip you up and it may mess you up. We don't want that. Now, a big key factor of the test itself is, as I told you, that you don't get intimidated by it. Don't. Stay positive. If you think it's hard, then it's going to be hard. If you think it's easy, then it's easy. Stay positive. As long as you say, hey, it's a test, I'm going to do good on it no matter what happens, I promise you when you look at it, you'll be in a better mood. Don't go in negative. Don't go in stressed. Don't go in thinking that, oh my God, everything's going to happen. Don't. Breathe. Reflect on the fact that this is just a test. That's all it is. It's important, but it's just a test. Take it in stride. Now, don't become distracted when you take the test. And it is going to happen. You are going to think about, oh God, do I have enough time? Oh God, what's going to happen? What's going to be on the next test, on the next section? How many questions? Don't. Stay focused on what you're doing. If you do that, you're going to have so much better time on this.